Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. I have something that it isn't even really about fishing. It is indirectly. But again, I've so often I talk to my best buddy Dave, who lives down in Cayuga Lake, who has lived here his whole adult life. He was very well known in this area. He's a bank president. He sat on boards of so many different companies here. But we talk about what makes life really important to us now, which is fishing, and also our life experience. And Dave grew up as a farm boy before he went into baking. And so he has a vast experience his whole life of being out there, either in the woods or on the water. One of the things we were talking about is I was telling him about the otters that I was seeing in the pond that I was going to. I hadn't seen otters before there. I fished there day after day, year after year. And I told you about this a week or so ago. I told you about seeing a family of otters. Well, I saw them again the last time I went out fishing. I was telling Dave that. He thought that was pretty interesting. He said, well, you wouldn't believe it, but down here where he grew up, being on the farm every day, he said, all of a sudden now we've got fisher down here. And when I say down here, I'm talking in the Finger Lakes. Fishers are a large form of weasel, many, many times bigger than mink. I've talked to you about them before. A lot of people have seen fisher in the past and thought they were seeing mountain lion because with their tail extended and you see them at a distance, they look like maybe a big cat going through the area. Well, I said, wow, Dave, I didn't know there weren't fisher down there before. He said, and so I asked him, I said, well, what do they normally eat? And he says, well, they normally eat porcupines. But he said, we don't have porcupines down in this area. So I said, well, what else would they eat? And we got into that discussion. The other thing that I found interesting was that years and years ago up here, I don't remember there being possums. But now there are possum in this area. And Dave said another thing that he's noticed is in all the woods bordering his farmland, because his family still lives on the farm near Seneca Falls. And he said, I never saw red squirrels. Now he says, I'm seeing red squirrels everywhere. So why am I telling you this? First of all, I thought you might find it interesting that fishers eat porcupines, because listen to me. There aren't. I'm getting into my basic gritty vocabulary here that shouldn't exist on the radio. Basically, there aren't very many things that want to eat a porcupine. You know the end results. They start chewing on a porcupine, they're going to have a mouthful of quills. So I wasn't aware that fishers ate porcupines. The other thing is, I think it's always interesting when we stop and look at the changes that take place in the environment around us. And the one thing for certain, the one thing that you can count on for certain, that things will never stay the same. Things are always in change. And the change, as we look back over the years, that is taking place up here. I know as a kid growing up in the Southern Tier, coming up to this area was a huge treat. My dad would bring me up here in the winter. He and I would come up and we'd go snowshoe rabbit hunting. We never saw cottontails, just snowshoe rabbits. In the same areas where there used to just be snowshoes, now there's cottontails. And believe me, they're completely different. Cottontails are rabbits, snowshoes are hare. Snowshoes don't go underground, cottontails do, and we could go on and on about it. But it's a change that is taking place. And there's so many other changes. The invasive species we talk about. And so I just wanted to bring this interesting thought to all of you, even though it's getting cold for me to go out fishing right now. But I love thinking about all the wonders of the environment around me. I've told you that every day I go running, and every day the highlight of me running, it isn't the joy I get of pushing my body, because it's a struggle. And it's not that I go out and think, oh, what a great runner am I. I go out and think, wow, well, I get through it today. Well, what helps me get through it is looking and watching all the things around me as I run, the animals that I see. I've told you about the woodchucks in the past, the foxes, and now it's the deer that I see. My point is there's a wonder in life around us, and we can get really scientific, or we can lose ourselves in the techno world around us, but we really shouldn't lose the mystery and the wonder of all the other living things that share this world with us. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.